Yep, it's me. I finally decided to get out of the coma that I call procrastination and actually make a video for once. But long story short, basically got an incredibly bad sickness, was bedridden for basically 3 weeks, and I ended up losing a lot of motivation just to make anything. So I'm gonna make just this quick video and just see how it goes from there. So there's just a couple things I wanted to talk about, and it's mostly just, I guess, criticisms I have for the game, and I'm not gonna, try to bully the devs on this. In fact, I'm actually gonna have to defend them in this case, to a certain extent. I'll explain why here in a bit. But basically, we're in this bit of a loop in the game right now where this is now going to be a thing that happens every year where it's going to go... Basically, what we're going through right now is that Christmas ended, so the Christmas event's no longer a thing, and we're in this bit of a limbo where there are no updates, and it has been about 2.5 months since we had an update. We're finally getting one here in the next few days, and I'm gonna be real with you, I'm not really that excited. Don't get me wrong, I think it's oh cool, it gives me something to do in this game, but I don't know about you. I just don't think it's gonna be worth it, especially since I heard the announcement that they're adding another crate. So, you already know how I feel about crates. This basically led me on to just sort of jot down some ideas about how, okay, if I want to try to, improve this game in some way, this is probably how I would do it. So the first things first is really just, since we're adding a whole new crate, why can you not bring back the old rewards? It just doesn't make any sense why you would nerf these maps incredibly hard, where newer players are really struggling to grind, one. As in, stuff like Castletown and Corporate, unless you get a Mimic, you're getting maybe, not even 20 gold that entire match for, 10 minutes. Actually, probably even longer than 10, because they're only set up as Wizard and Chef, so let's say 11.5, probably, just for a good estimate. And that's, that's if they're auto-skipping. Chances are they're not. They're a new player. They're not going to auto-skip. It just, because they don't want to get overwhelmed so easily. They don't know how the game works. That's just a bit of a thought, but I really think they do need to, bring back some of the old rewards. Because right now, the grinding maps are giving us maybe, 35 gold, 20-something XP every about 12 minutes. And that's, on some of the harder maps, Blast, Heck, and Honeycomb, where we're basically... If you want a solo grind, you're screwed. And a lot of people play solo on this game. Not everybody has a dedicated friend group. And if they did, well, they're probably gone by now because they got bored. I mean, what happened to the old rewards? Back when something like Silent Sanctuary, something you could do in maybe 9-10 minutes solo. Probably not anymore, but you could do it in about 9 to 10 minutes solo. 54 gold, 40-something XP. That is incredibly worth it. Considering now that Silent is a lot harder to solo than what it used to be, it would make sense to have those kind of rewards. So, basically, higher players, higher level players, can actually, have enough coins to be able to buy stuff, and lower players can have an easier time leveling up, which is kind of what they should be doing. Which is now going to bring me into my next point. Revamp solo player gameplay. So, what I mean by that is that this game is way too teamwork based. I mean, think about it. How come you see all the maps that have recently come out, a lot of them you can't even solo. And if you can, it requires insane amount of either RNG or just straight up horrible strats that make no sense, that come in way too close. A big one for me was back when I soloed Hard Oddport. Back when that was possible, that was probably the hardest thing I think I've ever done in this game. that I actually feel proud about doing. Having to worry about going full-blown damage and risking my early game to not getting killed by the purple wisps on that map, it was incredibly stressful, considering this is back when, Fracture was actually good. Not so much anymore, but in all honesty, I think it's for the best that he got nerfed. But that's besides the point. The point is, if your solo gameplay doesn't work, then a lot of people are going to quit pretty early. While it is a good thing that they added global matchmaking, I do believe that, a little too late, maybe? And also that doesn't make the map easier at all. That doesn't make maps easier. It makes it easier to find people, but I think if y'all have even played the game for maybe like a month, I think you know that some people are not the brightest when it comes to playing the game. And that includes some high levels on top of that, because everybody plays the game differently. Back onto the whole solo thing for a moment. Basically, some towers in this game just don't perform. It's not like, oh, every tower in this game basically can perform. It's rather, maybe half of them can, and the other half are not only outclassed, but are quite literally unable to kill things. A big example of this one is Volt, alright? We all know that we can't run the risk of buffing Volt, technically, because you run that risk, okay, now you gotta make sure Frank is still gonna remain decent. So, I thought of two ways you can kind of make solo play a lot better, and this can work for group play even, too. I think it's about time we get a 6th law in the game. I don't think it really is going to affect the game that much. Alright, in all honesty, if you're running something like this, like how I always run Balloon Pal and Spectre. Alright, well, now I'm down to do 2 damage towers, and I have Lemonade Cat always in the same slot. So, I'm down to 2 damage towers, and they have to be enough to not only clear the entire wave of enemies, but have enough damage to kill the boss. You see, if I actually had a proper 6 slot, I could actually run Bite solo. I could run, early game. That's gonna help me. I could run better damage options to help me out with the boss. You see where I'm going with this. Another thing that you could do is, and I know this is going to sound a little bit sketchy, buff every tower's damage on all levels by 25%. The only exceptions being summoners and support units. Now, why would you want to buff them by 25%? One, it would make the game a lot more new player friendly. Because people come into Tower Heroes because they see the design and it's like, wow, this actually looks like a really pleasant looking game. Let me try it. Only for the new player to get literally shredded because they didn't know what they were doing. And yes, I know there is a tutorial, but in reality, is that really going to help them in the long run? And think about it. If you're looking at this, I mean, what? 25% more damage? What would that be? 26, 27? You can even go to decimal damage if need be. I would just say buff the damage of those units. Now, what this would do is that higher tier towers are going to seem more valuable, while some of the lower tier towers will also seem more valuable, such as something like Volt. Alright? And you look at this, 22 damage, alright, so what would that be, 25%, about 26.4, somewhere around there. But basically, it would, just that extra damage increase would help the unit a lot. It would help some of these units that really struggle competing against something like Branch. Now you may say, oh, well, wouldn't it outclass the tower even worse? And not really. That's the thing. When you look at people's decks, what's the one thing you always see? It's the same 3 towers. They're not using them because they're overpowered. They're using them because using another option will probably cost them the game. This damage buff that is given to these specific towers, or given to literally every tower in this case, would fix that and allow people to actually be able to run these lower tier towers if they wanted to for fun, and not have to risk losing the game. Another thing I also wanted to bring up is this. If we do end up getting to the 6th slot, how about locking that slot into about level 40, so that way newer players are, you know, still kinda constricted to their loadouts, but they're not going to be incredibly overpowered. And thus meaning that it actually gives a purpose for people to get past level 30 and gives them a reason to be like, hey, I kind of want to get this 6 unit slot. And if I get this, then that means these maps will probably be a lot easier for me. Another thing I should bring up is this. The only reason maps are hard nowadays is because of one factor. You see this little purple thing right down here? Your mana? What happens if you just remove this? Well, it makes the game incredibly easy, and it gets rid of your only factor preventing you from winning the game. Mana literally controls this game. And this is another thing I want to talk about. Buff the mana gain by default. And I'm going to say this because of one reason. I know they're going off of this thing being like, oh, they could just use Lemonade Cat to get all that mana. And you realize not everybody starts out with Lemonade Cat, and especially for newer players, maybe something you could do is that on some of the easier maps, like the levels 1 through 20 maps, or level 1 through 15, you can have those specific maps give you increased mana gain on purpose, and then just keep all the level 20, 25, and above maps the same mana that we have right now. Because by then, people will realize that the farm will actually be valuable, and lower players won't literally get screwed over because they didn't pay money to get Lemonade Cat when they had the chance. Now, I said at the beginning of the video that I was going to have to defend Hiloh, and yeah, I actually will. In this case, you see, this is technically their first long-term project that they've had to keep going to keep the player count up. So obviously, they're probably not gonna have, you know, the experience for this kind of stuff. They're probably not used to the constant backlash from communities. They're not used to how tower defense games can work. They want to do it their own way. And if they want to do it their own way, go ahead. But that can ruin the game at the same time. My personal theory is basically just that right there. That they're not quite experienced for this kind of stuff. And they're kind of maybe a tad bit overconfident in terms of what their working power is by only having 3 main people work on the game and then just having contributors do whatever the hell they want, because ultimately they really don't work on the game. They just happen to be active in the Pixelbit Discord, and yeah, that's about it. So ultimately, when you do kind of like criticize Pixelbit in general, just keep in mind that it's a pretty short team, one, and they're definitely not used to long-term projects. Alright, because this game has only technically been going on for about 2 years now, and, I mean, in 2 years, we've come quite a long ways, as in, they actually added servers to the game at one point. That's one thing that you can thank them for, because, I mean, no other tower defense game really has, like, a whole server thing, and I guess it is unique to a certain extent. I mean, all it is, basically, is just, you know, being able to invite your friends and people that you trust to help you on a certain map without having to worry about randoms joining. That's pretty helpful. And being able to use servers publicly so that way random people could join and help you on a hard mode map. I mean, it's a win-win right there. That's one thing Tower has that most other games literally do not. And if they do have it, it's more of a died down version of it. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to talk about. At the end of the day, you know, the people at Pixelbit who work on the game, which, you know, Rad, Smelly, Hiloh, ultimately, they're still human. They have lives to worry about on their own. And, I mean, if they want to make the game how they want to, they can. I just happen to give criticism just to show, hey, this is another option you can take. But if you want to do your own thing, go right ahead. Now, last thing I kind of want to show you is something with Beatrice and Bomb Float. If you know where this is going, get ready. So, let's just bring out my favorite guy of all time, Plastic Roller Test. And I want you to see what happens when these bees kind of start attacking this Blastek guy. Keep in mind that this is a maxed out Beatrice, by the way. Alright, I'm gonna call him out now. So all the bees are there, right? You see the bees? Not anymore. Although you might want to fix that, by the way. I'm just making sure. Or Smelly or Rad or whoever the hell does the balancing at this point. Anyways, that's all I want to talk about today. I just wanted to get something out for a video. And why not do another criticism video like the same one I did last year, except a little bit more brainy, I guess. I don't know. But that's all I want to talk about today. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.